Hey y'all, welcome to I Got a Story to Tell. I'm your host, Niambi Kiesha, holistic wellness practitioner, hoodoo spiritist, and Bronx native. And during our time together, I will share some of my musings on all things life, spirit, plants, and parenting. So get comfortable and let's dive right in. So, welcome to another episode of the I Have a Story to Tell podcast. I'm your host, Niambi Kiesha, and I'm excited to be back. We wrapped up our community building series. We had a week in between where it was just me and you guys, and now I'm happy to be back with a guest. And so this week we are going to center around and talk about the power of manifestation. So, last week I talked a little bit about the month of May and, all of these different things that were going on, this breakthrough course that I participated in. And I felt that it was a really good segue into talking about this power of manifestation. So, first, I would like to introduce my guest, the beautiful Miss Sation Konchellah. And Sation is a mental wellness counselor and she's also a yoga instructor. Sation and I met through, we both got our yoga teacher training completed through I Am Yoga, which is a collective of Black and Brown yogis here in Charlotte as well as Greensboro. And we actually have, well, they actually have participants from all across the country. But that's how Sation and I met. And so I was really excited to have her as a guest. I think this is going to be an amazing conversation, just talking about manifestation, how it shows up in our lives, the power of it, things that we've had to get over to really buy into it. Yeah, and we'll just go from there. So, welcome, Sation. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you too. Thank you for having this space, first of all. But I'm really excited to be here to talk about one of my favorite topics, the power of manifestation.
Yes.
Um, I remember when we met for the first time, and I realized we weren't the same height when we met.
Oh,
I always thought we were about the same height, but there's a little difference. But it
right.
was at the yoga retreat for women of color. And
Yes.
I remember you said, I'm a master manifester. I was like, okay,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah. Yes. Oh,
yeah,
you're taking me
yep,
back.
yep.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
one of your shares, yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think even that language, right? We're going to just jump right in and start talking about it because I would say leading up to probably that moment, I won't even say that experience. That moment was the first time that that language came out of my mouth. Um, and so this easily had to be like about probably like 2 years ago, right?
Mm,
Yeah, I want to say
2022,
yeah,
2023, one or the other in the
yeah. So
summer.
2 or 3 years
Yep,
ago.
yes.
Um, and I thank you for bringing that up because it seems so long ago, but I remember I've shared openly in 2019, I went through some significant life changes. Two of the most significant being losing my mother and ending a long term marriage. And in that share that day in the circle, I don't remember what the prompt was. I don't know if it was how we introduce ourselves or something, but that was the moment that it clicked for me that I had to start telling my story different. That
Oh, I love
I'm,
that.
I'm I'm not the things that happened to me. They
Mhm.
happened and they contributed, but the words that come out of our mouths create our reality. And in that moment, I promise you, I remember thinking, I am a master manifester. I created this whole life that I have, good, bad, or indifferent. But yes,
That
that
part.
moment was the first time it came out of my mouth. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad to have been there to bear witness, because I believed you then. So, but like you said, every part of our lives was once a thought that we participated in creating.
Mhm. Mhm.
And for me, the introduction to manifestation and really the mindset, what I know about that is you got to be ready.
Mhm.
So even before I was 10 toes down in law of attraction, manifestation, being really careful with the words that I say to myself about myself. Someone tried to introduce it to me around 2007. I was like, what is this universe stuff? Like, what is this? I'm a Christian. So,
What are you talking about,
what are
right?
you talking about, the universe? And then another good friend of mine said, just replace it with what works for you. Replace that word that's got you stuck and look at what it's saying about how your thoughts become things, your thoughts become realities, and how important it is to say what you do desire and not the opposite. So, coming from a place, and I had a realization this actually this week that there was a time when I was my biggest hater. I was my biggest hater. I was my own
Mhm.
biggest hater. The things that I would say about myself to myself created a reality that wasn't my favorite. But now knowing what I know I participated in that. I participated by basically visualizing things that were the opposite of the abundance and joy and positivity that I actually desire and desired then, but needed some mindset shift. Needed some mindset shift.
Yeah. That's so powerful. It's so powerful in a couple of different um areas that you touched on. One about the mindset shift, right? And that's really what this work is. It's realizing what we do really say to ourselves, right? That
Mhm.
on average, if you ask someone what they think about themselves, they'll verbalize, right? That no, I'm good, or I have confidence, or I'm this, or I'm that. But when we get down to the core of it, our our train of thought, our record. I was actually in a work meeting today, and one of my colleagues mentioned a book called Soundtracks, and I was not familiar with it. I am going to go and look it up, but apparently it's talking about the soundtracks that we play over and over in our minds. It becomes our reality. And unfortunately, it's human nature. I also just saw a post the other day that talked about the dynamic between why we can hold on to negativity so easily. And it's because our bodies are created to survive. And so, if there is an impending threat, our bodies are always preparing to keep us safe. And so, we will naturally gravitate toward the negative or
Mhm.
the dangerous or the survival. And we have to work to get to the positive. But also,
Absolutely.
yeah, when you said being able to give language to what you desire, and that's what I share with people all the time. If I ask somebody, what do you want? They'll say, well, I don't want this, and I don't want that, and I don't want to be like my mother, and I don't want to work with no nasty people. But what do you want? A lot of people will struggle to say, I want a peaceful environment. I want some place where my gifts are valued. I want to be loved. I want emotion. I want affection. I want joy. I want money. I want to be in, we can say what we don't want, but it's almost like you have to build up the muscle of verbalizing what you desire. And I'm glad you mentioned the law of attraction because I'm sure it's going to come up all throughout our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But that was that experience at um the yoga retreat for women of color. And then shortly after that year, it was 2022 because I was on a whirlwind of like all sorts of things. And I went to see Abraham Hicks in Atlanta.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
life changing, right? But the thing that they talk about that resonates with me, that I even work, I tell people all the time, I make moment by moment decisions, right? It
Mhm.
is not easy. When you see those of us that are doing the work, don't assume that it just comes easy. We're making a choice. We're still making a choice to do the work. And the idea that the present, that reality is the past. That's how I verbalize it.
Mhm.
Reality is the past. If you think about having a car with a glass in the floor, right?
Mhm.
As soon as you drive over a point, the point of reality, it's behind you. When we started this conversation, whether it was 3 minutes ago, that's the past. So the idea that we have to stay stuck in reality as opposed to choosing to see, experience, and respond to things the way we desire, that for me, that mindset shift allowed me to do that, and as a result to move through the world differently. I look for peace. I look for joy. I look for opportunities to express gratitude. And it has been life changing. Life changing.
I would have to agree with you.
Yeah.
The negativity bias that you talked about at the top, where we gravitate, and the opposite is actually the work to get to a positive mental equivalent, to get to a place where you're you're looking for ways that the universe is egging you on. You're looking for ways that are affirming that you're on the right path. You're looking for ways that are benchmarks and milestones that say, okay, this thing that's in my heart is possible, and I'm getting closer and closer to it every day.
Mm-hmm.
So my introduction to the deep work, I was in a mastermind group, a manifesting mastermind group, and we met weekly. We talked about our desires. We did visualization exercises. Um, we did things to keep it fun, to keep it exciting, to not make it tedious when you're working towards manifesting a thing, but also to lean into the magic of not needing to know how things are going to work out, not needing to have the steps. I like to say the how is not my business. So this desire has been placed in my heart. And as a result, I believe that it's possible, because why would I think something that was impossible?
Right. Right.
And so I believe it's possible. And therefore, my work is to continue to believe that it's possible, not to try to manipulate things to make them happen. Though I do believe, there is inspired action and things that you do to move closer, but it shouldn't be laborious,
Mm-hmm.
right? It
Yeah.
shouldn't be laborious to bring something to fruition that has been placed in your heart for to become a reality, to become manifest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I realized about the release of the how, for
Mhm.
me, it was because once I realized that if I have to come up with the how, then that means the how is limited to my level of experience and understanding. So the release of the how for me also allows things to come into my experience, me to meet people and bump into people that have had experiences that are far from anything that my brain could conjure up, right? Because we only know what we know. But when I took the limits off, right? I just heard that Israel Houghton song in my head, like take the limits off. My control put limits on what the universe, God, spirit, higher self, my team, I was putting these little limits
Hmm.
on a magnificent power that could bring every single thing that I need into my awareness. And
Mm.
I agree with you. I say the same thing too. Like, why would I have had this thought if it wasn't supposed to be? Like, who would play that kind of game?
Right.
Right?
And the more
Um,
ridiculous, the better.
the more ridiculous. So
Yeah.
I did an astrology session at One Fest a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about all the different signs, and I was talking about Pisces and how people say, you know, Pisces is Delulu, and so one of the women said, you know, yeah, like when I was growing up, people will always tell me like take your head out the clouds, and I'm like, well, where else is your head supposed to be? Like, of course I want to have my head in the clouds, and of course I want to believe that the world wants to help me. And of course, I move through life in that way. And what else should I be doing? I should be stressed. I should have my head in the sand. I should not believe that people want to help me. I should believe that everybody is out to get me, conniving. And here's the other thing that I said, believing that people want to help me does not become a detriment for me because at the same time I listen to my spidey senses. So if I believe you want to help me and you show me that you don't, then I'm gone quick, right? So
Easy
it
peasy.
all works together. All works
Right.
together. But one thing you mentioned that I want to highlight is when you said I was my own worst enemy. I'm paraphrasing. I think you
Hmm.
said I was my own op, and you said I participated. And I appreciate you for sharing that because I think sometimes that is the crux that people struggle with, right? What are you trying to say? That I want to be broke, that I'm calling this into my life? I'm not saying that you want it, but I'm saying that somewhere your thoughts and your energy are inviting it
Right.
because the universe responds to the energetic vibration that we give out. And when we talk about doing the work, and so I always share these concepts, manifestation, or just any type of healing work. I consider manifestation or getting to the place of being able to trust it a form of healing work because you have
Mhm.
to heal up your limiting beliefs. You have to
Absolutely.
rewire your brain. um and so I do believe that it can be difficult and that we may need support, but we
Hmm.
do have to realize that we are willing participants, willing, active, and willing participants in whatever is showing up in our lives. So, talk to us, if you would, about how you came to be able to accept that or not push back against that.
So I'm going to say it really started with an excellent therapist.
Yeah.
It really started with an excellent therapist who really helped me to identify the limiting beliefs, the negative tape that I was playing about myself, and all of the things that were creating the vibrations that led to a cycle of dissatisfaction. I just say it like that.
Yeah.
It started with talking about mindset. It started with being really honest about and beginning to catch myself when those things when I'm starting down a story that doesn't line up with the life that I want. When I'm starting down a story, I'm going into some self-blame or some self-judgment or something. This one therapist that I only saw once, she taught me a tool to use. Um, called thought stopping. That's basically like in your head, you say nope, 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 when the thought starts to try to take over and send you down into a spiral. So mindset shift really just began with, learning more about myself and who I am, learning and feeling more self-worth, being proud of myself in a way that maybe I wasn't before. So my hat is off. I'm gonna say her name, Monica. If you're listening,
Yeah.
she
We
changed my
thank you,
life.
Monica. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and was also instrumental during the time when I was learning about how to create the life that I desire, how
Mm,
to create how to set intentions, how to be intentional with my thoughts, with my words, how to use visualization. And I always talk about my magic note cards. This is where I write my intentions to manifest down. And then I have a little box that has a slit in it, like a suggestion box, and I put them in there and I forget about it, set it and forget it. And today I pulled some out. These are the ones that happened. They're not the only ones, but I pulled some out of there because, you know, I've heard people say that many of us are living our previous dreams right now
yes.
in so many ways. There are things that maybe you talked about, dreamed about, wanted 5, 10 in childhood, a year ago, 6 months ago, that have come to pass, but sometimes our focus is such that we forget all of the magnificent blessings, all of the exceedingly abundantly above things that have happened in our lives when we get kind of pigeonholed into thinking about what didn't go right
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yet.
Thank you for sharing that. I
Mhm.
call my box my God box. And it's right here. I'm gonna show it to you guys here. This is my God box. It says, can you see it?
I do. Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
then what's for me
Yep.
can't miss me. But it's the same thing. It's but what I appreciate you
It's
saying.
the
So
same thing.
I
Mm-hmm.
put it in here, I pray over it, I shake it up. But this morning, I went through it and I took two of them out and I wrote done. It's or I wrote because I said the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. I said everything doesn't still belong in that box. So now I'm gonna make room. This is
Ooh,
done. I wrote done on it.
I
And
love
now
it.
I'm gonna put some new ones in there. But I love you giving that example because I think people need to understand it's the practical, day by day, moment by moment decisions. It's not magic, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned a few things. The gentleman that I talked about that said we have the tendency to go back to negativity, he
Mm-hmm.
said one of the most powerful ways to overcome that is gratitude, is
Is
reflecting
gratitude.
on we are
Mm-hmm.
living our past prayers, right?
Right.
And spending time in that space. The other thing you mentioned is one really good therapist. And so for me, I'm going to give mine a shout out. Her
Mm-hmm.
name was Tara. She was my therapist in Jersey right before I moved here. And same thing, I had seen maybe a few therapists before, but she was instrumental. And so for me, I guess I started seeing her maybe like 2015 or so.
Okay.
And
These synchronicities, girl, 2015. My box says many adventures await, but yes, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, 2015. And so, but I love that you remember the tool that Monica gave you because for me, what Tara gave me, which I now know is a yoga breathing exercise, but she gave me four square breathing
Hmm.
because I, first of all, I have really bad road rage. And some people think it's a joke. I mean, it might be, but I lived in Jersey and it was a very real thing. And the day I realized, like, what the HE double hockey sticks are you doing, Niambi? Was one day this lady cut me off, and before I could start acting ballistic, my son did from the car seat.
Hmm.
I was like, no more,
Yeah.
no more. But I realized it wasn't me being angry at the other drivers. It wasn't, I mean, I ain't love the turnpike, don't get me wrong. They could take you over the edge, but it was that I could not see past my struggles, my frustrations, the limitations, that I wasn't living the life I wanted, that I was exhausted. And that was the recording that I played in my mind over and over. And I was a pot waiting to explode. And she looked me dead in my eyes and she said, Niamba, you have to get it under control. And she gave me four
Hmm.
square breathing. At this point, it was directly connected to my road rage because she said, you can do it. I don't want you to give you something like where you need to close your eyes or whatever. She was like, while you are driving, you can inhale for four, hold for four, exhale for four, breathe normal for four. 10
Hmm.
years later, I still utilize that, but how it came full circle for me was that breathing to calm down the present moment and focus on something that would keep me in a calm state. That was her directive for me, right? So I would do the breathing, calm myself down, and then like maybe start thinking about the beach or, and that is Abraham Hicks, right? When Abraham Hicks talks about even if something is not working in our lives, if something is not bringing us satisfaction, trying to figure it out in our minds is still projecting our energy toward what we don't want.
Don't
And we
want.
need to stop the cycle. And that could mean meditating and then turning on some music and dancing,
Hmm.
taking a breather and getting some ice cream. Like, sometimes people think when we say shift your thoughts to something positive is that you're supposed to try to see the problem situation in a good light, but that keeps you tangled up, right?
Right.
So I appreciate the raising up of a good therapist because I value therapy. I believe that it is important. I believe that it's important to have a safe space, and I also believe that therapy or a safe therapeutic space can come in more than one way. And I say that because I participate in traditional therapy, talk therapy, went to a therapist. But just know if you hear my voice and that doesn't resonate, there are other ways, there are other methods, other forms, but getting the help and the support to really dig into how you got to where you are is important, and it will support you in moving forward in these other practices such as manifestation. You also talked about visualization, which I love. So do you want to share with us, like, do you have a visualization practice or do you have a particular visualization that you did that sort of stuck with you that you felt was pivotal for you?
So, one of the things that I love to do is future forecast. Like, for example, see myself on the beach in the Cayman Islands, or see my bank account doing what I wanted to do, or just imagining what a day in the life of my ideal occupation would be.
Mm-hmm.
So just really spending time engaging the senses, thinking about what would it smell like to um, be on the beach? What would it feel like? What would I see? What would I hear? Just going, would I be having some comforters or pina colada? Just really, really embodying what it is that I intend to manifest. So, and when it gets difficult. So like you were just talking about when you're still focusing on how to fix a thing that you're giving the energy. So one of the things that we talk about is pivot and release. So pivot away from it and find something to self-soothe. Because sometimes we can get stuck on a thing we want to come to fruition. Like there was one thing in my box. I was like, how many times did I write this? And that's when you have to pivot and believe I get my good. I believe that I get my good, and you know, all things work together for good, and that what you believe you'll see, all of those things are kind of things that I remind myself when I'm pivoting, or if I need to release the attachment to the thing that I'm waiting on. So, visualization, definitely writing things with pen and paper. And I love that you have taken your manifestations and kind of created a to done board. Because we also used or use vision boards. So since I first learned what a vision board was, which was around 2015, I've been hosting vision board parties, and it was something that I did for clients at first because I was like, this is cognitive behavioral therapy. This is, looking at positive outcomes and not getting stuck down in a negative spiral. This is allowing yourself to dream about the outcomes, whether or not you believe them in the moment. And that's one of the things that I like to say. If you don't believe it yet, are you willing to believe it?
Mhm.
And if you're not willing to believe it yet, are you willing to be willing to believe it? Like, could this be something in the future? So doing vision boards, and part of my vision boarding activity is actually writing down. So people come to the vision board and they're like, "Oh, you got a whole agenda? We're not just cutting out magazines and drinking wine." No, no. We're gonna meditate.
Mhm.
We're going to envision what it is that you would like to see, have, do, be. And then after that, the inspired action is that then you write about it, and then you find visual representations of the things that you're looking for. And I just want to add, and I shared this, that on my 2025 vision board was to be on a podcast.
Yes.
And here we are.
And here we are. And here we are. Yes. Yes. And I
Mhm.
appreciate you breaking down that process, right? The meditation, then we're going to write about it, then we're going to take the inspired action because it's layered, right? And
Right.
it's getting it into each level of our awareness. I love that you said embodying what you want to experience, that your visualization allows you to use your senses. Again, going back to Abraham Hicks, when they talk about you want to give off the vibration of what you desire. So when I talk to
Mhm.
people, I work with them to break down, I want to make more money. Why?
Mm.
Because what do you feel would happen when you make more money? Do you want to make more money because you would have more time freedom, and then what would you do with that? Do you want to make more money because you want to shop? And when you shop, how do you feel? It's getting to the base level of how does the thing that you're asking for make you feel, so
Mm-hmm.
that then we can do a visualization of that feeling
That
so that
feeling.
your body is familiar with it. Because a lot of times we ask for things, and when we get there, we don't know what to do there. We don't
Mhm.
know, if you're not a joyous person, if you have not experienced joy and you don't know
Mhm.
what joy feels like, you will be miserable with the money, right? And so it's getting down to, I want a new job. Why?
Mhm.
Because I don't feel challenged in my job. And if you were feeling challenged, how would you, if you were being challenged, how would you feel? I would feel more valuable. And when you feel valuable, how do you feel? Well, I feel more empowered. I sit with my shoulders a little bit straighter. Okay, so we're going to work on making sure that your body always knows what this feels like, so that we're going after the feeling, and we get that through the things that we are looking to manifest. But it's the feeling that, that's what our energetic currency is how we feel, the way that our tone fluctuates, the way that if we smile or if we're sad, all of that feeling, that emotion, when we say that the universe responds to vibration or our energy, that's what it means. Sadness has its own vibration, excitement has its own vibration, happiness has its own vibration, anxiety and angst has its own vibration. So I appreciate you bringing up that embodied piece, because a lot of people, Iyanla calls it dropping below the neck, right? So
Mm.
when she deals with people that are like all head, she'll
Mhm.
say like you're neck down dead, and that
Wow.
is, you know, she's a bit.
Uh-huh.
It's a bit
Yeah.
intense, but it's to it, it is like that shutdown of emotion. That means there's
Mhm.
no heart. When we think about the chakras, right? I talked about them yesterday. Neck
Mhm.
down means you're not communicating, you're not saying anything, your heart is closed, you're not being creative at that sacral area, you
Mhm.
don't feel stable when we talk about that root chakra. And so it's all synced up and connected. So the other thing you touched on that we have to dig into is this idea of attachment, right?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
there's a one of my yoga teachers, Robin, she's here in Charlotte, and she, I want to say this may have come from Abraham Hicks, but I attribute it to Robin. Um, Attachment is where suffering lives. Attachment is where suffering lives. Attachment
Good.
is refusal of being in the present moment. Attachment
Mhm.
is, you can be in a situation where you're having an amazing experience, and all you can think about is it going to go further, or will it continue, or and so you are attached to the outcome or attached to stories, and that's where suffering lives. So I would say, when I think about attachment again with Abraham Hicks, it's that piece of meditation helping us come back into our bodies, into
Mhm.
present moment, and just having this current experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is good.
Yeah.
Attachment is where suffering begin
Live.
lives.
Yeah. I think that's what she said. I may have
Mm.
chopped and screwed it a little bit, but that's what I remind myself. Anytime I try to get attached to
Mhm.
an outcome of a thing, or holding on to it,
Mhm.
grasping, so tightly, as opposed to, the flow, right? One of my favorite songs is called Let Me Be Like Water, right? Life is going to flow. People are going to flow. Experiences are going to flow. And when we want to hold on to a thing so tight, right? It it will no longer do what it did for us when it was free, right? It's
Mhm.
you see these examples all the time. Like, if you love a flower, you leave it in the garden. As soon as you pick it, it dies. Soon as
Mm,
you pick it because you want to hold it and have it for yourself, as opposed to observing it, seeing
mm-hmm,
its beauty, maybe going to visit it in the garden, but leaving it there, right? We become very attached to things. And I mean, some of that is, a lot of it is the society that we're in right now. Our society is one that pushes fear and scarcity, because that's how they get you to buy, and consume,
consumerism. Yeah, yeah,
consumerism, right? And so
absolutely.
it's realizing that all of this really, to me, the manifestation, the astrology, the hoodoo, the any practice that I have, the yoga, it is my path back to my natural, authentic
Mm-hmm,
self, in community and communing with nature, the natural cycles, and abiding by those universal laws. I find
mm-hmm,
that when we abide by universal laws, and granted, and Candace and I talked about this on the episode that we were on, you know, there's going to be a level of spirituality, but at the same time, we did incarnate in this physical experience. So we do need to be having human to human physical experiences. It's not to stay all in the woo woo and the esoteric, but we are a part of this cycle. We are a part of nature. And if we could see it that way, we can release the attachment. The seasons come, our experiences come, and if we go with it and then put our energy toward what we desire, but put our energies toward what we desire in the most authentic and naturally grounded way, we
mm-hmm.
will see our power make manifest of these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I know we touched on a little bit when you talked about that you were a participant, but a participant in like some of the limiting beliefs. Were there any other barriers that you had, like around get, like you said, you're 10 toes down now? Did you, when you think about your journey, or I would say, I'll make it a two-part question. That, or do you have an experience where it sort of started to turn for you, where you were like, "Oh, wait a minute, this thing is working."
Um, okay, so barriers.
Okay.
The first barriers were when it was mindset. Mindset, that's the answer. Mindset was the barrier. And I think when it started to shift was, so we started that group, um, and wrote down 4 intentions. And it was like a 6-week group. And we met, we talked about them. Um, and one of them happened like super quick. And I was like, wait, that was lightning fast. That was like, because those quantum leaps, those rapid manifestations, the combined gratitude of seeing how, number one, the gratitude of looking at what already is that we look past on a day to day. Like, somebody did not wake up this morning. Here we are, it's 7 p.m. Somebody could not smell the coffee. There's so much to be grateful for. And even pausing is, for me, the quickest way to shift my energy is to pause and think of what I'm grateful for. So in that, the gratitude, the rapid manifestation, and then being encouraged to think a little bigger than the thing. And so one of them I'll share, when my son was a teenager, we just were not on the same page. We were a mom and a teenage son. And we were having a rough time, a really rough time. He was in high school. Um, and that was one of the things that I wanted to see improve. So what I needed before any of that was the opening. So that's what I intended to manifest, the opening for us to build and improve our relationship. And that's my homie. I am one of his little friends at this point.
I love
I
it.
am. We were not friends when he was 15, 14. We were not friends during that time. And so that was one of those initial things that I intended to manifest a better relationship. And also, one of the things that I'm so grateful for was because I'm not from here. I've been here in North Carolina for a while, but I was having a hard time finding like-minded community members to be together with, friendships and brunch buddies and people to talk on a podcast about manifestation. Like I intended, one of my intentions was to find my tribe. And that during this season of understanding the power of openness. So, for that visualization, I'll tell you specifically, I imagined my heart with a neon sign that said open. And I imagined what it would be like to have a community of friends and chosen family and to have things to do, have places to go, have people to do vision boards with, and that was one of the manifestations that I'm so grateful for, including another thing that was on there, become a yoga teacher. That was one of my things that's in the box.
Mhm, mhm.
And that also created more community, more community. I
Yeah.
hope I answered the question.
You did. No, thank you so much for sharing that. I do. I love that. And I love that you said, I set the intention for the opening.
Mm-hmm.
I just needed an opening. I needed an in. And I set the intention for that in, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then because it always comes back to we have to be willing to do our part, right? So I set the intention for the opening, for the in to improve the relationship with my son. And here we are. I set the opening, I set the intention for heart opening. But once you put an open sign on, when people come to your store, are you nice? Are you nasty? Because you
There's
could put an
that.
open sign up, but I
There's
ain't gonna keep
that.
spending my money here if you nasty,
There's that.
right?
There's
And
that.
so it's getting over those fears. It's getting over, and that's how I see it tied to like the therapy is if we have some really deep seated thoughts and beliefs around
Mhm.
relationships or why our hearts are closed. Like, don't get me wrong, anybody that's listening to this, if you have had to close your heart for protection,
For protection.
that
Mhm.
is what you had to do. But I think I shared recently that I had to acknowledge I didn't judge the version of me that
Mm.
did certain things because she did it to protect us and she did a damn good job. I just had to
Mhm.
thank her and say, but I got us now.
Yeah.
I got us now. So you don't have to be scared that what I want us to do is going to cause us to be unsafe because I have the tools and I'll keep us safe, right? Those are the types of conversations when we talk about limiting beliefs that we do still have to have compassion and grace and patience for versions of ourselves that did what they needed to do to get us here. But now let me take it from here.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's
So,
good.
well, thank you, Sation. I think this was an amazing conversation. We went down some really good rabbit holes.
Agree.
Um, is there anything in closing that you, if you, when you thought about being on the podcast, when you put it on your
Mm-hmm.
vision board,
Mm-hmm.
that you wanted to make sure you shared, or any final thoughts for anyone that's listening that might still be, hesitant? Like, how can I manifest when my reality is
Mm-hmm.
hell? Or, any closing words you want to share?
So I would go back to what we said about having an automatic negativity bias and thinking about beginning to think about what you do want instead of what you don't want as exercise, just like when you go to the gym. So the first time you pick up a 2 pound weight, and maybe that's, just the heaviest you can do. So that may mean that you're able to catch some of those thoughts, but not all of them. So one of my other favorite therapists, Dr. Joy Harden Bradford, she says, we didn't get here overnight, so we might not leave immediately. And
Mm,
so having patience with yourself as you're shifting your mindset, and also, not headed into toxic positivity where you just act like there's a silver lining everywhere, and there are things that don't have a silver lining. Um, so yes, being patient with yourself, um, thinking about what you do want, and if it feels hard to imagine it, that's probably the right thing. If it feels difficult to think about it as part of your reality, that's probably where you need to lean in and see if you can be willing to believe it or willing to be willing.
yeah. I love that. We're going to close there. See if you can be willing to believe it, or at least willing to be willing.
Yeah.
Yep. So thank you again, Sation. Thank you guys for joining us this week for the I Got a Story to Tell podcast. I'm your host, Niambi Kiesha, and we will be back next week. All right. Y'all take care.
Thank you.